Alright, so while everyone's been busy hyping up the usual big new releases, a bunch of amazing single-player games kind of slipped through the cracks. You probably didn't hear much about them, but you should have. This list is all about games that maybe didn't make headlines, but totally deserve a spot on your playlist. So, let's jump into 15 new single-player games you probably missed. First game on the list is Dungeons of Hinterberg, the kind of game that feels like it was made after the devs asked themselves, what if we took the life sim vibes of Persona, slapped them into a cozy alpine village, and threw in some magical dungeons for good measure? And honestly, it works. You play as Louisa, a burnt-out law intern who decides to go on a soul-searching vacation, and ends up fighting monsters, solving puzzles, and snowboarding between mystical rifts. It's part dungeon crawler, part small-town simulator, and part please let me move here fantasy. The visual style is a joy. Bright colors, clean cel-shaded lines, and landscapes that make you want to breathe in the non-existent air. The combat is smooth and light on the thumbs, though it never quite scratches the depth itch that hardcore action fans might have. And sure, the puzzles can feel a bit Zelda-light, and sometimes the game feels like it wants to do too much without going all in on any one system. But you know what? It's fun, it's relaxing, and it made me care about NPCs with ski goggles and magical grudges. If you're looking for something between a hack and slash and a hug, this is a great weekend escape. Just don't expect to master deep combat systems or be blown away by narrative twists. It's more of a hot chocolate by the fire after a light adventure kind of game. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. And on number 14, we have I Am Your Beast. It's a grim, stylish, and unapologetically intense stealth action game that turns every room into a puzzle of blood and brutality. You play as a former government assassin dragged back into the shadows after years off the grid. There's no holding your hand here, no fancy HUD, no helpful markers. Just you, your instincts, and the sense that everyone around you probably deserves what's coming. The game's biggest strength lies in how feral it feels. It's not about being a silent shadow, it's about unleashing fury with precision. You chain together brutal takedowns, shift through shadows like smoke, and leave behind rooms that look like Jackson Pollock got very, very mad. But here's the rub, it's not for everyone. The story is sparse, abstract even. Sometimes it borders on trying a bit too hard to be edgy or mysterious, and a few of the stealth mechanics feel a tad undercooked. Enemies don't always react in believable ways, and the difficulty can spike out of nowhere, turning what should be a clean kill into a panic-induced mess. But that roughness actually adds to the vibe. It's not sleek, it's raw. And for players who want to feel like a barely contained beast waiting to explode, it delivers. Just, don't go in expecting hugs and closure.
Target spotted.
And next we got Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, a title that sounds like a prog rock album and plays like someone fed Twin Peaks into a puzzle box. This one's a slow burn noir-style mystery that's equal parts unsettling and hypnotic. You play as a woman invited to a mysterious hotel in Europe where reality quickly decides it's had enough of being consistent. The game is filled to the brim with cryptic puzzles, logic problems, shifting perspectives, and a narrative that practically dares you to figure it out. It looks gorgeous, with high contrast black and white visuals and the occasional shock of red, very art gallery murder simulator energy. Every scene oozes tension, not because you're being chased by monsters, but because you know something's off and you just can't shake it. The puzzle design is both the game's brilliance and its curse. On one hand, it's deeply satisfying when things click. On the other, some of the puzzles are so obtuse that I swear they were designed by a crossword-loving AI having an existential crisis. There were moments I stared at the screen longer than I'd like to admit, wondering if I was solving a mystery or trying to understand a tax form. But man, when it works, it really works. If you love cerebral experiences that don't hold your hand, and you're okay with a game that might occasionally make you feel like the dumbest person alive, Lorelei's waiting. 1000X Resist is that rare narrative sci-fi game that doesn't just swing for the fences, it aims for a parallel universe and somehow lands it. Set in a distant future where humanity is nearly wiped out by an alien infection, you play as a clone of a long-dead revolutionary, reliving the past through memory dives. If that sounds wild, it is. The story unfolds like a layered onion of trauma, identity, and dystopia, with enough twists to make a pretzel jealous. The game's strength is absolutely in its writing. Dialogue is sharp, poetic, and unsettling in all the right ways. The presentation is striking too. Part visual novel, part walking sim, part what genre even is this? And it works. Mostly. The biggest hurdle here is pacing. Sometimes the game slows to a crawl, as if it's savoring every dramatic pause like it's a fine wine. That's great for immersion, less great if you've got a low attention span or we're hoping for more interactivity. And yeah, the mechanics are light. If you need combat or constant input, this might feel like an interactive book with extra steps. But if you're in it for the story, the emotion, the big sci-fi themes, you'll be hooked. It's ambitious, weird, and unapologetically bold. A narrative punch in the brain with a melancholic finish. And next game in the list is the Plucky Squire. It is like what happens when a children's storybook takes a shot of espresso and decides to become a video game. You start in a 2D world, flipping through charming pages, battling baddies, and solving little puzzles with a smile. Then boom, you hop out of the book and into a 3D environment, running around the desk, climbing pencils, and jumping over coffee cups. It's like Toy Story met Paper Mario, and they made a game after a very colorful brainstorming session. The creativity is endless. Levels constantly throw new ideas at you, mixing perspectives and gameplay styles with almost reckless joy. It feels fresh, fun, and accessible in the best way. But that also means it doesn't dive super deep into any one mechanic. You get the sense that the devs were more interested in keeping things moving than polishing each system to perfection. The story is sweet and lighthearted, though occasionally a bit too Saturday morning cartoon for its own good. Still, it's impossible not to smile while playing it. Even when the camera angle gets a little awkward or a platforming section makes you question your spatial awareness, you're still having a blast. It's not trying to be a masterpiece, it's just here to charm your socks off, and it does exactly that. Children of the Sun might sound like a gentle indie band, but it's more like if a revenge thriller met a sniping simulator and they decided subtlety was optional. You play as the Girl, a cult survivor turned one-woman army on a quest to eliminate the fanatics who ruined her life. What sets it apart is its incredibly stylish one-bullet-at-a-time mechanic. That's right, each level gives you a single shot, and once it hits a target you can redirect the bullet to the next poor soul, like some kind of murder pinball. It's satisfying in a very should-I-feel-guilty-about-this kind of way. The aesthetic is gritty and moody with bold reds, sharp blacks, and vibes that scream art school dropout with a vendetta. But while it's got style, it's also a little too laser-focused on its core idea. Once you've wrapped your head around the bullet mechanic, it doesn't evolve much, and you might find yourself wishing for a few more surprises. Plus, the story flirts with depth, but never quite commits. It's like someone hinting at trauma while speedrunning through a therapy session. That said, it's punchy, unique, and undeniably memorable. It's the kind of short, sharp experience that leaves a mark, just maybe not one that goes super deep. Infinity Nikki is one of those games that sneaks up on you. You look at the pastel aesthetics and say, this'll be a fashion dress-up sim. And yes, you'd be half right. But then it turns into a sprawling open-world adventure where your outfits give you magical powers. You need to glide? There's a dress for that. Want to shrink down to explore tiny spaces? Toss on your tiny travel couture. It's basically Breath of the Wild if Link had a wardrobe worth envying. The world is vibrant, full of hidden secrets, whimsical creatures, and scenic charm that makes you want to pause and take screenshots every 5 steps. Gameplay-wise, it balances light exploration, environmental puzzles, and outfit-swapping mechanics surprisingly well. The fashion system itself is impressively deep, giving the impression that the developers went all in on both style and substance. The downside? It sometimes struggles to stitch everything together smoothly. The story leans heavily into fantasy tropes, and there are moments where the pacing stumbles like someone tripping on a high heel. And let's be honest, if you're not into dress-up mechanics, the magic might wear off fast. But for those who are, this is a delightful escape into a world where beauty isn't just skin deep, it's your toolkit. Indika is one of the most delightfully weird and hauntingly beautiful games to come out in 2024. A story-driven journey through surreal, semi-religious landscapes that feel equal parts dream and fever. You play as a nun who is clearly not having a great time, dealing with inner demons, literal and metaphorical, while trying to navigate a crumbling world. The game explores deep themes like guilt, repression, and spiritual crisis, but it also isn't afraid to throw in oddball moments. The art direction is stunning, gothic, melancholic, and dripping with mood, and the soundtrack swings between haunting chants and unsettling silence like it's scoring an existential crisis. It's the kind of game that makes you want to sit still for a moment and feel things. The downside? It's more walking sim than action game, and while the puzzles are thoughtful, they're more about reflecting the narrative than challenging your brain. Also, the tone is so consistently bleak that you might need to chase it with a cartoon afterwards to recover emotionally. But if you like story-heavy experiences with emotional depth and a unique voice, Indika is one of the most unforgettable trips you'll take this year. Just don't expect sunshine and rainbows. Expect spiritual dread and confused goosebumps.
What is your goal? To help the girl or show what a hero you are? Exactly.
And next game on the list is the Thaumaturge, the kind of RPG that feels like it was designed in a smoky Warsaw cafe at 2 a.m. while someone was reading old folklore aloud and taking shots of absinthe. Set in an alternate 1905 Warsaw, where demons known as saluters are very real, and political tension is thicker than the smog, you play as a Thaumaturge, a kind of supernatural fixer who uses demonic powers and deductive reasoning to uncover conspiracies. It's got a unique flavor, blending turn-based combat with detective work and a strong narrative backbone. The writing is clever, occasionally brutal, and filled with moral gray areas. The game looks moody in the best way. Cobblestone streets, candlelit rooms, the works. It's like Victorian Sherlock Holmes got lost in a Slavic ghost story. Combat is satisfying, especially when you're using your saluter's powers to mess with your enemies' minds, but it can also feel a bit stiff. Animations sometimes lag behind your choices, and it lacks the kinetic flair of more modern turn-based systems. The pacing can be uneven too, with stretches of dialogue-heavy scenes followed by sudden bursts of action. Still, it's a deeply atmospheric game with a strong identity, and if you love folklore-laced storytelling and old-world mysticism, this one's worth a deep dive. Just don't expect hand-holding. The city's full of secrets, and it's up to you to find them. Pacific Drive is like if you crossed Firewatch, Mad Max, and a haunted car commercial. You're a lone survivor inside the Olympic Exclusion Zone, a mysterious stretch of the Pacific Northwest where nature and supernatural forces are in constant collision. Your only companion? A beat-up, upgradable station wagon that's somehow both your lifeline and your panic room. The gameplay loop is beautifully simple and slightly terrifying. Drive into the zone, scavenge materials, dodge lightning storms and physics-breaking anomalies, then hightail it back to your garage before everything collapses around you. The immersion is top-notch. The car feels like an actual character, from its creaky doors to the way it hiccups when you try to start it in a panic. The world is eerie, atmospheric, and filled with moments that make you look over your shoulder even though no one's there. The downside, the driving can be janky at times, especially when your car is half falling apart and you're trying to steer with 3 functioning tires. And while the crafting system is solid, the narrative feels more like a ghost story you overheard than a fully fleshed out tale. But the vibe? Immaculate. If you like survival games with a strong sense of place and you've ever yelled at a car in a horror movie, this one's tailor-made for you. Another crab's treasure might look like an underwater cartoon for kids, but surprise, it's actually a Souls-like in disguise. You play as Krill, a crab who just wants his rent money back, but ends up battling corrupted sea creatures and toxic pollution instead. It's got the charm of a Saturday morning show, but underneath the bubbly exterior lies some seriously challenging combat. You'll swap between bottle caps, spoons, and other oceanic junk for armor, and it's hilarious how well trash translates to gear in this game. The level design is genuinely clever, and the writing's filled with tongue-in-cheek jokes that poke fun at everything from capitalism to genre conventions. But be warned, while it tries to be accessible, the difficulty can still spike like a sea urchin in your path. The combat sometimes gets floaty, literally, and camera angles during fights can occasionally go rogue, turning what should be a tense moment into a chaotic crab rave. Still, it's so full of heart and claws that it's hard not to love. If you've ever wanted Dark Souls but more crustacean-y, then you'll absolutely dig this one. Little Kitty, Big City is proof that sometimes all a game needs to be is unapologetically adorable. You play as a cat. That's it. A cat who accidentally falls out of an apartment window and must find their way home. Through alleyways, across bustling streets, and into trouble at every possible moment. It's like Untitled Goose Game, but fluffier, and with more nap breaks. The controls are smooth, the animations are so expressive you'll swear this cat deserves an Oscar, and the sandbox-style exploration is just enough to keep you curious without ever being overwhelming. Want to knock over potted plants? Go for it. Wear silly hats? Absolutely. Befriend pigeons and terrorize hot dog vendors? You bet. The game doesn't take itself too seriously, which is its biggest strength. On the flip side, it's also very short, and if you're looking for deep gameplay systems or a complex plot, well, the cat just shrugged and walked away. But it's perfect for what it is, a serotonin boost with paws. It's cozy, wholesome, and will absolutely make you want to curl up somewhere sunny afterwards. Just try not to smile. Go on, try. The Rogue Prince of Persia feels like someone took the classic time-rewinding prince, tossed him into a roguelike blender, and gave him wall-jumping parkour moves that'd make a ninja sweat. It's fast, fluid, and surprisingly modern while still paying homage to its roots. You dive into procedurally generated runs across lush Persian-inspired landscapes, battling enemies, dodging traps, and occasionally eating dirt because you missed a ledge by that much. The combat is tight, with satisfying combos and a growing arsenal of tricks that reward aggressive play and quick thinking. What's cool is that the game doesn't just slap a rogue label on, it actually weaves the concept of iteration and learning into the prince's journey. However, the early version does feel a bit thin on content. It's got a strong core, but after a few hours you might notice a bit of repetition setting in. And while the art style is bold and colorful, some areas blur together a bit much when you're zipping around like a caffeinated squirrel. Still, this is a stylish reinvention of a legendary series, and it's well worth watching as it continues to grow. Plus, wall running into someone's face never gets old. Second last game on today's list is Nine Sols, a game that feels like what would happen if Hollow Knight read a bunch of Taoist philosophy and decided to go full anime. This action platformer blends precision combat, beautiful 2D visuals, and a mysterious world that's equal parts cyberpunk and ancient myth. You play as Yi, a vengeful hero with a glowing sword and a serious grudge against the titular souls, who are basically godlike rulers hoarding power and secrets. The parry-heavy combat system is both its greatest strength and your greatest test of patience. Timing is everything, and the game does not believe in hand-holding. But when you nail a perfect deflect and dismantle a boss with surgical precision, chef's kiss. The world design is equally impressive. Lush, strange, and dripping with detail that makes exploration feel like unwrapping a series of strange, sacred gifts. That said, the game occasionally leans too hard into its own mystique, leaving you to connect the narrative dots with minimal guidance. Also, the difficulty can spike without warning, turning exploration into a gauntlet. But if you like your platformers thoughtful, tough, and layered with lore deeper than your average sci-fi epic, Nine Sols is a standout experience that hits with brains and blade. And final game on the list is my favorite Still Wakes the Deep, the kind of horror game that doesn't rely on jump scares or buckets of gore. It builds tension like a slow drip IV of dread. Set on an oil rig off the Scottish coast in the 1970s, you play as a worker dealing with some seriously suspicious happenings. And by suspicious, we mean everything is going to hell and you might be next. The game traps you in tight corridors, creaking metal walkways, and a constant sense that something is watching you from the shadows, or worse, crawling out of them. It's less about fighting and more about surviving, sneaking, and desperately trying to keep your heart rate under control. The voice acting is phenomenal, bonus points for the heavy Scottish accents. And the atmosphere is top tier, selling the rig as a living, groaning beast of steel and rust. If there's a complaint, it's that the gameplay is a little one note. Once you understand the loop, the fear factor tapers off. And some sequences feel more scripted than reactive. But the world building, pacing, and sheer psychological tension make this a must-play for fans of smart horror. Just don't play it late at night, or alone, or if you've ever worked offshore, or near water. And that's a wrap on 15 new single-player gems you might have missed. Hopefully, you found something new to add to your list. If you've played any of these, or if there's another hidden gem I didn't mention, let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss out on more gaming recommendations. Catch you in the next one.